Hello everyone, Kent.Bressler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, podcast endorsed and sponsored by kidneysolutions.org.
Good morning, everybody. I can say good morning because that's what it is here in Texas, nice and sunny. I'm going to proceed to about 95 degrees today, so we're going to get this done so we don't melt. I'm going to start with prayer this morning, and then I'm going to introduce my kidney anniversary pal, and we'll get going. So, dear Lord, grant us peace and understanding as we navigate through these difficult times, and bring us closer to you so that we might have the strength to meet all these adversities. We ask this all in your name. Amen. Well, today is not a regular podcast. What this is a transplant anniversary. We get somebody from AAKP in conjunction with AAKP who has had a transplant, and we just got a free talk with them. And today we're gonna talk with a really good friend of mine, Kevin Fowler. Kevin's on the board of directors at AAKP, and you know quite a bit about AAKP. And if you're not a member, if you're listening, we'd sure like to see you become a member. Now that AAKP has been around for 50 years now, and it supports, I think, the best group of people that you'll ever want to meet. They're strong and they're great kidney warriors, and Kevin's one of those. So this morning we're going to talk with him about his transplant and get a little background. He's going to tell us his story, and we're just going to go from there. So, Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Kent, and thank you for the invitation. It's good seeing you.
Yeah, it's good seeing you too. We've gone back a long ways. We've been doing this for a good while, and we've been, I think, pretty active. And every time something comes along that needs to get voiced, or we've been in some research projects, and in general, we've been really closely tied to AAKP, but also been closely tied together. When we used to were meeting, we always seem to be able to gravitate to each other. So, and you always think of me, and I really appreciate that. You get me involved in things. I'll never forget that. It's been a good ride. So, well, I wanted to talk to you this morning about your transplant, and be so that if you would just explain what's going on with your life and give us a background. Tell us your story, essentially.
Yeah, so I'm from St. Louis originally, and in our family we have had several generations have polycystic kidney disease, a genetic disease, and my grandfather had it. He died before dialysis became available, and then my mom was diagnosed after the birth of my sister, so that was the third child. And I saw firsthand my mom suffer with PKD, and then I saw her on dialysis, and it really was left a deep emotional wounds with me just seeing how she suffered, and obviously that being genetic, there was always concern that I was going to have the same disease, but I didn't have the courage to find out until I was forced to.
How old were you when you found out?
I was actually 39. I had to go to my doctor to be tested. I'd had back pain around Christmas time, and I had at that time my son was about 8 months old, my daughter was 3, and I went to my doctor. This was in January 2001. So I had called him over the holidays and asked him if he would do an ultrasound, and so he told me January 2001. that I was going into renal failure, my primary care doctor. And up until that point, he had been seeing me and he told me that my kidney function was fine. So I went from being told that you're doing great to you're going to be on dialysis in 3 to 5 years. And I just been married 5 years at that time. And my son was less than a year. My daughter was 3. As I told my wife, she really won the lottery when she married me. So. But
yeah, he won the lottery.
She did. But yeah, it was really a devastating. In all honesty, it was a very devastating moment when I got that news, and the doctor didn't deliver the information probably the best. But one thing I did do is I just when he wanted to make a referral to community nephrologist, I just had my gut said, just don't trust what this guy's saying. And nothing personal, but he just didn't really know that much about kidney disease. And so what I did is that I was working in the pharmaceutical industry. I contacted a friend of mine at Washington University in St. Louis, and then he made a referral to a friend of his who was a nephrologist. And ironically, I had my appointment on my mom's birthday, March 6, 2001.
Really?
Yeah, she is deceased, but as ironic, it was March 6, 2001.
Yeah.
And then I went in there with my wife, and I were both had a lot of fear. And he said right off the bat, he goes, "You're not going to need to go on dialysis." He said, "You'll be able to have a preemptive transplant." And I said, "What's a preemptive transplant?" I had no idea what that was. My fear had really prevented me from figuring out what my treatment options were. But I was extremely fortunate that I had just such an exceptional doctor that provided me that path. And
that's a blessing to have one like that. Usually they're ready to parade you right on dialysis. And you and I have we've talked about this several.
Well, Ken, if you think about it, at that time back in 2001, less than 3% of people were having preemptive transplants. And now we're 16 years later. That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Now, how can that be?
It hasn't. No, it hasn't. No. Well, this talk, we've had this many times before. It's a matter of, where you're at, what because if you go in blind and don't know anything about it, you're going to just follow just like a sheep, whatever they say, let's get prepared for dialysis when darn well that may not be an option for you. And fortunately, you got transplanted. I wanted to ask you, did you have any pain early on? Did you have any pain with this PKD?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ken, about pain. Yeah, that's actually what led me to find out and get the diagnosis of PKD. So that's what I had. It was like around Christmas time of 2000, I started having back pain. And then I thought that was just by carrying, moving some furniture, carrying firewood. And so that's what led me to seek out the diagnosis. Yeah. But I really, and that pain is still continued because I still have my native kidneys. So.
Yeah, that was the second question. So you still have your native kidneys. Was there an option? Were you given an option, or did you discuss having those removed? Because some people have them removed.
Yeah, I don't, my doctor had never really brought that up. Quite frankly, I just wasn't worth the risk going through it. I can handle the pain versus having good kidney function. It's a pretty good trade-off in my mind. So.
Yeah, early on in transplantation, this, but for the audience, a lot of the times they would take your native kidneys out and then do the transplant. So you had to run the risk of getting an infection, and you had to run the risk of not being able to recover well enough to go on and have the transplant. So they just decided overall to leave them.
Yeah, that was just the choice.
That's what they did with mine.
Yeah, yours as well. Okay.
Yeah. And then I wanted to make the correlation because a lot of people with PKD and a lot of people with FSGS, there's a world of difference in that transplant program. Looking at that disease process, I had no pain. I had never, with FSGS, never had any pain. But you guys with PKD, you got it. That needs to be known.
But we do have the pain. But I look at this so too, Ken, is a doctor explained to me too. If you're going to have a form of kidney disease and have a kidney transplant, it's really in many ways the disease to have, because we tend to have very good outcomes because we don't have recurrence of the disease, and I think the other thing too is that we're very motivated. We've seen family members go through dialysis. We know what's ahead of us, so you're very motivated to do well. So you don't have to tell us things.
Yeah.
So
how far out are you? How long have you had your kidney?
So it'll be August 5th. It'll be 16 years.
16 years. That's great. That's good. And that
not as good as you.
Well, if you look at longevity, it's all about you. I mean, I know there are certain disease processes that may return, what have you, but all in all, it's up to you. And you've carried yourself well. I think that's an advantage to not only you, but to your family.
Yeah, but I think if you're really honest and fair about it, right? I had the best treatment option. I had a preemptive transplant, so I didn't have to go on dialysis, so minimize that risk. And I think just generally too, looking at it, it's unlike diabetes and other situations like in FSGS that sometimes recur. We don't have to worry about that. So I think. I was really given a wonderful opportunity by having the doctor I did. I made the choice to trust my instincts, and I guess that's my message to everyone. Just always trust your instincts.
Get educated up. Don't just say you got it. Right? Isn't that how you feel?
My sense is that it's your health, it's your life, right? It's up to you to learn as much as you possibly can, or if you don't know, find people who could serve as a mentor to teach you. And
exactly.
I think that, I've always looked at my physicians. They're my coaches. They're there to help me. All my care team. I mean, they've been superb, and they're there to help you. And I just learn from them, have them teach me, and I challenge them sometimes too when I learn different things. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been sitting in this kidney world for a long time. And like you said, and this is not to say bad things, it's just the fact that there's been very little progress in research, but it's getting a lot better. There's a lot of new things coming down the pipe, and believe me, it's long overdue. That's a conversation we've had, that kidney disease takes a back seat to a lot of other disease processes. Not to fault them, just to say we've been fighting for a long time to try to keep kidney disease in the forefront.
Yeah, I would say, I think with respect to AAKP, I think one thing about AAKP is that they've always been a strong voice advocating for change in kidney disease, because in some cases they were a lone voice arguing for that. But I think right now, if you do have kidney disease, whatever it may be, I think there's a lot of optimism for the future. But my one suggestion to the community is to demand better treatment. We deserve it, and we have not received the best treatment historically. So I look at my situation. I've been very, very fortunate, but I know that many of my friends have not had the same good fortune. And I think that's also an issue of health equity, of giving people a fair opportunity to have the best outcomes. So that's something I believe in. Demand better care. We demand and we deserve better care. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And that's what your I guess it's your advocacy role has always been. Let's stand up for yourself and let's make it better. Let's not look back. Let's look forward. And that's the drive that I enjoy seeing in people. Let's do this. We have it. It's not going away. So let's get very active and do what we need to do. In your transplant life, what was the most difficult thing for you to do before you were transplanted, and then what was the hardest thing that you faced? Kidney disease.
I think though that I think the part for me to get my head around was just to be open to all the people that wanted to help me. That was hard for me to accept that. And my wife was instrumental in finding. We had 14 people that offered to be donors, and she was instrumental. So I think my biggest challenge was one, just being open to people who want to help you, to accept the love of others. That was really hard because that's not my MO. I tend to tough it out and not ask for help. But I think that was probably it. And then I think the part that I would say after transplant, you're laughing about that, but it's the truth. I mean, that was the hardest part, was just being open to people who want to help you.
Yes.
And
I see it every day.
Right. And I recognize my wife and my wife and the people that offered, it was just such a humbling experience. And then I would just say probably the biggest challenge for me afterwards is that I went through depression post-transplant because, it's a big deal going through a transplant. I had a job promotion, and I think that was probably the biggest area that I wasn't expecting, and that I had a hard time finding the answers, even though they were there. So I think that's one thing I would just maybe share with people that do have a transplant, that they do go through that rough period emotionally, that it's normal. Reach out to others who've been there, and so we can help you navigate that. And I would just say is that probably the biggest thing I've learned, like you, Kent, part of it's the mental framework you have. But, I look at you, you're very healthy. I exercise every day. I meditate. I journal write. I do all these things that keep me sane when we have our challenges. And I just think so much that, and then having a purpose in your life, right? That we
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We both share, and to make things better for those that follow us.
I think that's a really good point. It's not about us really. It is all up until the transplant. And then after you have your transplant, it's all on you to do more for others. That's exactly where we both have stood. A lot of our friends are that way. Let's make it better for the people behind us.
That's exactly it.
And that's really important.
Patrick, people like Jim Myers, Patrick G., Nicole Jefferson, Dave White, all of our friends. I mean, I think that's probably the part that's been fun, is the community that you form of friends that keep you going, right? And that to me is I've never been one who's gone to support groups to get my strength, but where I get my strength are my friends like you and others that set a good example for me to emulate, that keep me honest.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have a tendency, I've experienced the same thing, is to slide back. You're cruising along, you're doing all right, but the mental part of it can play tricks on you. You think you're doing really well, and then you hit a bump in the road.
Yeah, but I think that the part there is just, I've met so many wonderful people, like yourselves, and that I think the part that I like about it too is that there's a certain connection that is hard for others to understand, and I think that they have that emotional connection, like where someone says, "Oh yeah, you're going through that. I get it." Many times other people just don't get it, but it's nice to have that group you can turn to.
How about the idea before you were transplanted, when people take a look at you, they always say, "Well, you look, how you doing?" And you always say, "I'm doing fine." Well, when I work with people looking for donor, tell them, telling them that is just like shutting the door. You need to tell them I'm doing very well, but I'd be a lot better if I could find a kidney donor, because my kidneys don't function. I may look good, but I'm dying inside. I mean, just lay it out there.
That's just like with my wife, right? I said to her, she says, "Well, how do you expect you're going to find a kidney if you're telling everyone that you're okay?" And
it doesn't work.
I said, "You got a point there."
Yeah. Not only can they not give you a kidney or consider it or tell somebody about it, they can't pray for you. They can't get you. They can't get you where you need to be and have a successful transplant. And if you can't help yourself, who's going to help you?
Yeah, I would just say certainly the biggest problem in the process was me. That by far was the biggest problem.
That's big takeaway. That's the biggest takeaway, because that's usually the way it is. It's usually
once I got my ego out of the way, things became a lot easier.
Yeah. Who wants this anyway, right? Who wants kidneys? I mean, I thought that over time, before I was transplanted, I can remember even as long as it's been, I really thought that was a bad thing to be sick with kidney disease. I didn't want people to know it, because as you're trying to grow your career and everything, sickness is a bad thing. It's a career loser. I mean, it can ruin you, right? And so you tend to start building.
I didn't want someone feeling sorry for me. I think that's what it came down to. And I think that once you begin to understand, it's not a question of people feeling sorry, but the people that generally want to help you with no other motivation than the goodness. That was really hard.
Is so true.
It's so hard to comprehend that.
That is so true. It's not about actually telling someone about it. That's important, but it's having the courage to tell somebody. You got to build the courage to do it. You can't just sit back and not say, I have kidney disease.
That's exactly right. But I think once you get to the point where you then come to the point where you're willing to do that, then it becomes that much more easier. And then I think it really is a matter of just being open to people that want to help you. And I think that's probably, for me, the part that probably changed my life was just, it was such a beautiful experience. I mean, I always say that time when I had the transplant, after the transplant, was probably one of the happiest times of my life, because we were just the beneficiaries of all this outpouring of love.
Great point.
You're like, do I deserve this?
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to comprehend that. And it changed my life.
Men have a tendency,
Without a doubt.
Absolutely. I hate to break that. There's the emotions that well up in you, and it still come over me. I was going to ask you another question about it, because it happens to me. I may be sitting in church, or I can sit in a meeting and I'll reflect on something, and it emotionally grabs me. I have come to tears before. You talk about depression, or just not being with the program, so to speak, but I get emotional. I still now, as I get a little bit older, it's even more evident. Sitting around and thinking about the past, and you think, "Wow, how did I get here?" And do I deserve to be where I'm at? And
it's funny because you keep those emotions at bay, but as we're talking about, I started getting emotional thinking about that and talking about it. The same way too. It's always there. It's such a powerful experience, and for me, it really changed the course of how I lived my life in terms of taking chances.
Absolutely.
And I think for that, I'm so grateful for that experience, to go through that, because I think I wouldn't have done a lot of things in my life if I hadn't gone through that experience.
Yeah, because it gives you, the old saying, well, why'd you have the transplant? I did it so I could live. Well, that's true. I mean, you didn't do it so you could exist. You did it so you could live. And so you have to, in your heart, know that this emotion, it's a relief to get it out. Don't hold it in. If you got to shed a tear, it's okay to do that.
Yeah, it's actually, as we're having the conversation, is that there are a lot of those emotions that you keep somewhat submerged until you have a conversation like we're having now. But when I think back to that day when I had the transplant, I remember waking up and I looked at my wife and I said, "How did I do?" She goes, "You did well." And I remember I felt better immediately after the transplant, even though I was in pain. I felt immediately better. And it just was such a powerful experience. It's just hard to put into words.
You can't put it into words, but I had the same feeling. It's when you woke up and I had said going in, I'm gonna pee. I'm gonna be peeing when I come out of this thing. I know it, but that's what I do. and the nurses told me, "You're one ornery fella. We had to keep you from trying to stand up in bed." She said, "I still don't understand what were you doing." Well, I was trying to get up and go to the bathroom.
Right.
I really wanted to do that because I could. After spending all those, at least a year or more, I mean, very seldom going to the bathroom. And now having the joy of being able to get up and go, although that's a real small thing, it meant a lot to me at that point in time. So it's you can't imagine. Yeah, you got to go through it to really feel it.
And it's funny as we're talking, I can remember all those different events come flowing back, right? Getting out of bed, walking down the hall, right? And the doctor's telling you need to walk.
Yeah.
And receiving, cards and letters of support. And I, as we have the conversation, it's just, I think just never lose sight of the gift that you've been given. But but as we said, right, how do we make things better? Because things have got to get better for kidney disease. And in my opinion, we just have to demand better.
That's your. Yep, and you're right. We take a look at the amount of money that's spent on kidney research, and we know compared to HIV or to cancer it's phenomenal the difference between $19 per person per year for a kidney patient, and it's up around $600 per year per patient for HIV. So it's important that we get our share, try to work within the system to get more money for research. That's the most important thing right now. It's for the people behind us,
And I agree 100%, because the truth of it is, right, the work that Dr. Starr has done with NIH, there's so much about kidney disease that's really unknown.
Absolutely.
And it's kidney diseases. It's not kidney disease. It's plural.
No,
and
exactly.
And that's plural. Where I want we need a fair share to find the causes, to find treatments, to slow down progression. And I can't wait to the day when dialysis industry is no longer exist. It's probably going to be here as long as I'm around. But whenever that day happens, that will be when we hear announcements saying that dialysis centers are closing because of reduced demand. I'll throw
Won't that be a joyful day? Won't that be a joyful day?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because bless those people that are on it. I think about them every day. I almost constantly think about what a gift it was not to have to go on it, but I think about the ones that are. Bless their hearts. I mean, really think about what they're going through. And it is not, it's a horrible situation to have to be in when there are other opportunities. So that's why we do what we do.
And I think that, I think I'll just mention too, is just that, a lot of the work that I do, there's a lot of clinical trials out there that are looking to slow down the progression of kidney disease. Many patients that have kidney diseases are not informed of that. They need to be informed of this. You got to change the whole pathway. As I said, I think from my standpoint, I've been blessed beyond what I deserve. And what really bothers me is when I see people that have not been given the opportunity that I have been given. That's where my motivation is.
Yes.
Trying to level the playing field.
Yep. So the last question, the last question of the day for you. If you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? I know you'd have the transplant. There's no question. But what would you do to change the situation so it could have been better for you?
I would have not been so stubborn and listened to my wife. I would have done it a lot sooner. I mean, I was the biggest problem was me. And once I got my ego out of the way, things became a lot easier. So I would have done it sooner. So
yeah, that's that question I pose to people. 100% nearly. Nobody ever says, "Well, I'd have waited another 6 weeks or I'd have waited another year." I mean, they always said, "I wished I'd have done this a lot sooner." Yeah. And that's what preemptive is, isn't it? Isn't that really the chance? you don't get prepared for dialysis, you get prepared for transplant. And that's something that it's a takeaway, I think, here.
Yeah, if you're going into renal failure, the best treatment option is having a preemptive transplant. And I'll just say this: since I had that in 2004, the progress that's been made has been marginal. It's still less than 3% of people have a preemptive transplant, and you compare that to that's just unacceptable.
No, no. And we can get this. I'm going to have you back on later on down. We'll talk about this. So I wanted to talk about you. So I want to tell you, thank you so much. If there's anything you have left in your tank you want to say, please say it, because we're going to go ahead and move on, and we'll have you back another day. We'll talk the real world as far as kidney researching and where we're going in kidney disease.
Yeah, you know what I would just suggest next time, maybe have my wife on and talk about how she helped find a donor. I think that might be helpful to hear her, because I think for men, sometimes you've got to start listening to your wives more often, especially in these situations, and get our egos out of it.
Yeah, you have to be careful. Mine's standing there in the hallway listening to this. So
anyway,
I can't disagree with you at all. Okay.
All right. Good talking to you.
Hey, listen, anytime, you've got my phone number and you got my email, so keep that information coming, buddy. I really
Same here. I hope this was helpful. I was just trying to be honest.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed it. Jason, it was nice meeting you. Okay. Thanks again.
Okay. I'm going to close it out.
Thank you.
I want to thank Kevin Fowler for coming on this podcast. We're going to have him back. And remember, when we talk about AAKP, we talk about all the kidney programs that are out there. Get involved. And remember that Kidney Solutions is here for you. If you're looking for a donor, if you're looking for some education, if you're just looking for a mentor, give us a call at Kidney Solutions. We're here for you. This is a program that helps you and your family. So until the next time, keep breathing.